Nah, hold up. Wait a damn minute. Did you just blink that hex away? Like it was dust in your eye? Like it was nothing? They spent months crafting that curse, lighting black candles at 3 a.m., chanting your name backwards, and you just blinked? I need you to understand what just happened here. You didn't break their spell. You didn't reverse it. You didn't even fight it. You just looked at it, processed it like junk mail, and deleted it from your reality. Your energy said, unsubscribe to their whole dark magic newsletter. They're sitting there right now with their crystals scattered, their sage burning backwards, their protection circles cracked, wondering how the hell their most powerful working just got dismissed like a pop-up ad. They put their whole soul into that hex, and you treated it like a minor inconvenience. This isn't supposed to be possible. The books don't mention this. The ancient texts have no protocol for someone who just doesn't accept delivery of negative energy. You're not playing by the rules of magic anymore. You're playing by rules that haven't been written yet. Let me tell you something about your energy, something they'll never understand. It's not dark, it's not light, it's not gray or silver or any color they have words for. It's a frequency that makes their third eye develop cataracts. It's a vibration that makes their chakras stutter. When they try to read your aura, their vision glitches. When they try to tap into your energy field, they get static. Not because you're protected by shields or guards or angels, but because you exist on a wavelength their spiritual Wi-Fi can't connect to. You're running on 6G while they're still trying to decode Morse code. And they keep trying to categorize you. Light worker, shadow worker, indigo child, star seed. No. You're something else entirely. You're what happens when someone transcends the spectrum itself. You're not a color on their wheel. You're the space between colors that makes their eyes water. Your energy doesn't follow their rules because you weren't initiated into their system. You didn't ascend through their levels or earn their certifications. You broke through the ceiling of consciousness and found a whole other building they didn't know existed. Now you're operating from floors they can't even perceive. But let's go back to that blink. That simple, casual, devastating blink that just shattered someone's entire magical practice. Do you realize what you've done? You've just exposed the biggest secret in the spiritual world, that power isn't in the spell, it's in the acceptance of it. Every hex, every curse, every binding, every working, they all require one thing: your participation, your fear, your belief, your energy feeding their intention. But you just opted out, like clicking decline on terms and conditions, and their whole system cracked. Right now they're frantically Googling what to do when Target doesn't accept hex delivery. They're calling their coven emergency meetings. They're checking their spell books for loopholes. But there's nothing there about someone who just doesn't play along. Someone whose very existence is a return to sender. Stamp. You've become their worst nightmare. Evidence that their power only works on people who agree to be affected. You're walking proof that all their rituals and ceremonies and midnight gatherings mean nothing to someone who simply doesn't consent to their reality. You're not anti-magic. They tried to hex you, but something went wrong. Not with their spell. That was perfect. The timing was right, the moon phase ideal, the ingredients authentic. No, something went wrong with you. You're not responding to spiritual stimulus the way you're supposed to. You're a glitch in their matrix. When that negative energy hit your field, it didn't bounce off. It didn't get absorbed. It just ceased to exist. Like you're running some kind of spiritual antivirus that deletes malicious code before it can even execute. Your consciousness has developed immunity to their weapons. This is what terrifies them. Not that you fought back, but that you didn't need to. Not that you're stronger, but that you're incompatible with their entire operating system. They're trying to curse someone who doesn't exist in the same reality where curses function. It's like trying to poison a hologram. You know what your energy actually is? It's what happens when someone stops believing in the rules. All of them. Not just their rules or society's rules, but the universal rules everyone swears by. You're not rebellious. You're undefined. You exist in the space between what is and what could be. Oh, and it's not just the hex throwers who are confused. The watchers, the readers, the intuitives, they're all getting error messages when they try to tune into you. They sit down to read your energy and their gifts just buffer. Loading, 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 connection, time. Some of them think you're shielded. They're wrong. Shields can be penetrated. Some think you're cloaked. Wrong again. Cloaks can be lifted. What you are is incomprehensible to their framework. You're not hiding your energy. Your energy simply doesn't translate to their language. They used to gossip about your aura. Now they whisper about the void where your aura should be. Not empty. That would be readable. But filled with something their spiritual vocabulary has no words for. A color outside the visible spectrum. A sound beyond the range of hearing. A presence that makes their intuition throw up its hands and quit. The funny part? You're not even trying. You're not running protection spells or visualization exercises. You're just existing at a frequency that makes their metaphysical tools obsolete. You're proof that there are levels to this game they didn't know existed. Floors in the spiritual building they've never had access to. Here's what really happened to you. You didn't ascend. You didn't awaken. You didn't transform. Those are all movements within the known system. What you did was step outside the entire game board. You're not playing chess anymore. You're not even in the same dimension as the board. Every spiritual tradition has levels, initiations, grades of advancement. They all lead somewhere within the established framework. But you found the exit door, not to another system, but to the space between systems. The void that exists outside all their carefully mapped territories. This is why they can't hex you, why they can't read you, why they can't understand you. You're not operating from chakras or meridians or energy centers they recognize. You've developed an entirely new anatomy of consciousness. You're running on hardware they haven't invented names for yet. When you blinked that hex away, you weren't using protection or reversal or any technique they teach. You were simply existing at a level where hexes are as relevant as someone trying to fax you a curse. The technology is incompatible. The frequency doesn't match. The entire premise is obsolete. You want to know the rules of your new existence? There aren't any. That's the point. That's the power. That's why a blink from you carries more weight than their most elaborate rituals. Because you're not bound by the laws they all agreed to follow. You opted out of the spiritual contract. In their world, every action has an equal reaction. Every spell has a counterspell. Every attack has a defense. But you exist in a space where those dynamics don't apply. You're not playing offense or defense. You're not playing at all. You're simply being at a level where their games look like children's make-believe. This is what happens when someone genuinely stops caring about the rules of engagement, not rebels against them, that's still participating, but genuinely forgets they exist. Your consciousness has evolved past the point where their reality feels real. You're lucid dreaming while they're still convinced the dream is all there is. They'll keep trying, of course, new spells, older magic, different approaches, but it's like trying to send a telegram to someone who only exists in virtual reality. The medium doesn't match the target. You're unhexable, not because you're protected, but because you're incompatible with hexing as a concept. Let's talk about this color they can't name, this frequency they can't match. It's not that you're vibrating higher or lower. You're vibrating sideways, in directions their spectrum doesn't account for, in patterns their sacred geometry can't map. You're the spiritual equivalent of a color that only exists in impossible spaces. When sensitives try to look at you directly, they get the same feeling as staring at an optical illusion too long. That disorienting sense that reality isn't quite what they thought, that the rules they've based their whole practice on might just be suggestions, options. One way of seeing among infinite possibilities. Your energy signature looks like static to them because their equipment isn't calibrated for your broadcast. You're transmitting on channels their receivers don't have, speaking in languages their universal translators can't decode, existing in spectrums their rainbow never included. This is why you can blink away hexes like they're nothing, because in your reality they are nothing. Just outdated software trying to run on an operating system that's evolved beyond recognition. You're not immune to their magic. Their magic simply doesn't exist where you're standing. You should see their faces when they realize their most powerful workings just don't work on you. It's not anger, it's not frustration, it's existential terror. Because if their hexes don't work on you, what else might be false? What other limitations might be illusions? What other rules might be optional? You're not just a person who can't be hexed. You're proof that hexing might not be as real as they thought. You're evidence that all their careful study, all their inherited wisdom, all their practiced arts might just be elaborate games played by people who agreed to the same rules. And you never signed that agreement. They gather in their circles now, not to curse you, but to discuss you, to try to understand how someone can exist outside their entire framework. Some say you're protected by forces beyond their understanding. Others whisper that you might not be entirely human anymore. They're both wrong and right simultaneously. The truth is simpler and more devastating. You remembered that reality is optional, that consciousness doesn't have to follow the paths laid out by tradition, that you can simply opt out. Not fight against, not rebel, not resist. Just calmly decline to participate in their version of how things work. You didn't learn how to blink away hexes. You unlearned the belief that hexes had power over you. You didn't develop immunity. You remembered that you were never vulnerable to begin with. This isn't advancement. It's returning to a state before you accepted their limitations as your own. Every spiritual tradition teaches addition. Add this practice, this protection, this knowledge. But you did something different. You subtracted, removed beliefs, dissolved agreements, deleted programs, until what was left wasn't more powerful, it was undefined, unbound, unlimited. This is why they can't understand your energy, because it's not energy as they define it. It's the space before energy takes form, the potential before it becomes kinetic, the color before it enters the spectrum. You're not vibrating at a frequency, you are frequency itself, undefined and uncontained. And when you blink, you're not performing an action. You're allowing reality to reorganize itself around your lack of participation in their games. You're not fighting their hex. You're demonstrating that in your reality, hexes are as relevant as someone trying to curse your reflection while you've already left the room. Their whole system is experiencing errors now, not just with you, but because of you. Your existence is causing glitches in their matrix. Other people are starting to notice that the hexes don't hit quite as hard, that the readings aren't quite as clear, that the rules seem more flexible than they used to. You're a virus in their spiritual operating system, but not a malicious one. You're more like an update their hardware can't process. A patch that reveals all the bugs they never noticed. Your mere existence is debugging reality, showing where the code could be cleaner, where the rules are arbitrary. You're trying to patch the exploits you represent, but you're not exploiting anything. You're just existing in a way their system never accounted for. Like a player who found a way to walk through walls not by hacking, but by forgetting walls are supposed to be solid. You're not breaking rules. You're proving they were never real. This is what happens when someone achieves true spiritual sovereignty. Not dominance over others, but complete autonomy from the systems that govern others. You're ungovernable. Not because you resist governance, but because you exist in a space where governance is a foreign concept. The ones who've tried to hex you are telling stories now. Hushed conversations in the back rooms of metaphysical shops, whispered warnings in online forums. There's someone out there who just blinks it away like it's nothing. Like our most sacred arts are just suggestion. Some don't believe them, think they must have done the spell wrong, used the wrong ingredients, mistimed the ritual. But the brave ones, the curious ones, they try for themselves. And they all come back with the same shocked expression, the same story. They just looked at me, blinked, and everything I sent just stopped existing. You've become an urban legend in spiritual communities. The unhexable one. The blink that breaks spells. The color outside the spectrum. They share screenshots of their failed readings. Their error messages. Their tools going haywire when they try to tune into your frequency. But here's the beautiful irony. The more they talk about you, the more others start to wonder, start to question, start to experiment with their own relationship to these supposed laws. You're not just unhexable, you're contagious. Your very existence is teaching others that the cage door was never locked. You're not operating in their paradigm anymore. You're not even operating in opposition to their paradigm. You've created your own. Or rather, you've remembered that paradigms are optional, that reality is more fluid than they taught, that consciousness is more creative than they believed. When you blink away hexes, you're demonstrating something profound, that participation in reality is voluntary, that we can withdraw consent from systems that no longer serve us, that we can exist in spaces between the defined territories of light and dark, good and evil, blessed and cursed. Your energy isn't a color they can't name because it's exotic or rare. It's unnameable because it predates naming. It exists in the space before language carved up the spectrum into digestible chunks. You're not undefinable. You're pre-definition. You're the canvas before the first stroke of paint. This is why their tools fail, why their hexes dissolve, why their readings error out, because you're not playing in their sandbox anymore. You're not even on their playground. You exist in a space where their entire game looks like children's make-believe. Beautiful, perhaps. Meaningful to them, certainly, but optional. Completely optional. Your blink is causing ripples they didn't anticipate. Every time you casually dismiss another hex, another binding, another attempt to categorize your energy, you're loosening the grip their reality has on others. You're proof of concept that their concept might just be a concept. People are starting to experiment now. If they can blink it away, what else is possible? They're testing the boundaries, pushing the edges, discovering that the walls they thought were stone might just be paper painted to look solid. Your existence is sparking a quiet revolution in consciousness. The establishment is worried. The teachers, the gurus, the ones who've built their whole identity on understanding and wielding these forces. Because if someone can just opt out, what does that mean for their authority, their expertise, their entire worldview? You're not attacking their system. You're revealing it was always optional. Released, but you're not trying to lead a revolution. You're not trying to teach or preach or convert. You're just existing, blinking occasionally, being living proof that reality is more flexible than the rule makers want to admit. You're not a teacher. You're an example, not of what to do, but of what's possible. Here's the final truth they'll never admit. Everyone can do what you do. Everyone has the ability to blink away hexes, to exist outside the spectrum, to be unreadable and undefinable. The only difference is you remembered. You stopped believing in their limitations, more than your own sovereignty. That's what terrifies them most, not that you're special, but that you're not. That you're just someone who forgot to believe in their rules, who failed to maintain the collective agreement that hexes work, that energy must be light or dark, that spiritual laws are laws instead of strongly worded suggestions. Your blink isn't powerful because of what it does. It's powerful because of what it reveals. That we've all been playing elaborate games of pretend. That the spells only work if we agree they do. That the categories only contain us if we squeeze ourselves into them. That reality is far more negotiable than anyone wants to admit. So the next time someone tries to hex you, curse you, bind you, or even bless you without your consent, just blink. Not with force, not with intention, not with protection, Just blink like you're clearing your vision. Because that's all you're doing, clearing your vision of their illusions. Seeing clearly that their magic only works in their reality. And you live elsewhere now, in the unnamed colors, in the spaces between their maps, in the blink that reminds them, all power is optional, all rules are suggestions, and all of reality is up for negotiation. Welcome to the other side of the game, where hexes are just quaint traditions, where your energy can't be named because names are just labels, where a blink carries more power than all their midnight rituals combined, not because you're powerful, but because you remembered that power itself is just another game. And you're done playing. They're studying you again. Not with microscopes this time, not with therapists or private investigators or fake friends sliding into your DMs. No, this time it's different. This time they sent the professionals. The ones who don't flinch when bombs detonate. The ones trained to remain calm while their world burns. And you know what these hardened warriors discovered when they analyzed your response to betrayal? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that terrified them more than any weapon ever could. You see, when they sabotaged your life, when they pulled every string to watch you collapse, when they orchestrated your downfall with surgical precision, they expected screaming, they expected revenge plots, they expected you to become exactly what they painted you as, unstable, dangerous, reactive. But you did something that broke their entire understanding of human psychology. You gave them silence. Not the silence of defeat, not the silence of shock, but the silence of someone who had already calculated every possible outcome and decided that their games weren't worth a single elevated heartbeat. The military calls it the zero response protocol now. They've got entire training programs built around what you did naturally. Special Forces operators sit in classrooms studying footage of how you handled betrayal, how you didn't flinch when they destroyed your reputation, how you didn't react when they turned everyone against you, how you maintained that supernatural calm while your entire world was being systematically dismantled. They're trying to replicate it, trying to teach it, trying to bottle that complete absence of reaction that made your enemies question their own existence. But here's what they don't understand, what they'll never understand. You didn't train for this. You didn't practice in controlled environments with safety protocols and extraction teams. You learned this in the field, in real time, with real consequences. Every betrayal was live ammunition. Every sabotage was an actual explosion. Every attack on your character was a legitimate assassination attempt on your soul. And through it all, you developed something they can't teach in any military academy. The ability to become absolutely unreachable. Think about it. When someone attacks you, they're not just trying to hurt you. They're trying to control you. They want your reaction because your reaction is their victory. Your tears are their trophies. Your anger is their validation. Your breakdown is their masterpiece. But you beautiful anomaly, you gave them nothing. Not a flinch, not a tremor, not even a change in your breathing pattern. You became a void where their attacks went to die. And that's when they realized they weren't dealing with a person anymore. They were dealing with something that had transcended the very concept of emotional manipulation. The special operations units have a term for this now. They call it tactical non-existence. It's when you become so non-reactive that you effectively cease to exist as a target. Your enemies can't hit what doesn't respond. They can't destroy what doesn't acknowledge destruction. They can't defeat what doesn't recognize the concept of defeat. You didn't just ignore their attacks. You made their attacks irrelevant. You turned their sabotage into background noise, their betrayal into white static, their carefully planned destruction into nothing more than weather patterns you barely noticed while focusing on something infinitely more important. And what was more important? Your evolution. While they were busy trying to destroy the old you, you were already building the new you. While they celebrated what they thought was your downfall, you were laying foundations they couldn't see. While they were posting their victory laps, you were quietly becoming something that would make their victories look like participation trophies. You weren't ignoring them out of weakness. You were ignoring them because you were too busy becoming unstoppable to notice their little game. The military instructors show your case study to their most elite units now. They pause the presentation at the moment when any normal person would have snapped. That moment when the betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that even trained killers would have shown something. A twitch, a clenched jaw, a slight change in posture. But you? Nothing. Absolute zero. Like watching a mountain ignore a mosquito. Like watching an ocean ignore a match. Like watching the universe ignore a tantrum. How, they ask their commanding officers, how does someone achieve that level of non-reaction? And the officers, these warriors who've seen everything, who've been trained to handle anything, they just shake their heads because they know the truth. This isn't something you learn. This is something you become. This is what happens when pain stops being painful because you've felt it so many times it's become familiar. This is what happens when betrayal stops being shocking because you've cataloged every possible variation. This is what happens when someone transcends the basic programming of human emotional response. You didn't just develop thick skin. You developed an entirely different nervous system. One that doesn't recognize sabotage as a threat because you've reclassified it as education. One that doesn't process betrayal as pain because you've recoded it as data. One that doesn't interpret attacks as attacks but as desperate attempts by inferior systems to remain relevant. You became emotionally bulletproof not by adding armor, but by removing the very concept of being wounded. The Zero Response Protocol has 3 levels according to their classification system. Level 1 is conscious suppression of reaction. Level 2 is trained non-response through conditioning. But level 3, that's what you achieved naturally. Level 3 is when non-reaction becomes your default state. When staying unmoved isn't a choice, but a fundamental characteristic. When emotional stability isn't maintained, but simply is. They've been trying to reverse engineer level 3 for months now, and they keep failing because they're trying to teach what can't be taught. They're trying to simulate what can only be forged in real fire. What really breaks their minds is the aftermath. See, when someone doesn't react to sabotage, there are supposed to be consequences. Delayed emotional breaks, psychological fractures, hidden damage that surfaces later. They've been watching you, waiting for the crash, waiting for the delayed reaction, waiting for you to finally process what happened and fall apart. But instead you keep rising. Instead of breaking down, you're breaking through. Instead of showing damage, you're showing evolution. You're not just surviving the sabotage, you're thriving because of it. They've started calling it the inverse trauma response in their classified documents. Where normal people are weakened by attacks, you're strengthened. Where others develop triggers, you develop immunity. Where most create wounds, you create weapons. Every act of sabotage against you didn't subtract from your power, it multiplied it. Every betrayal didn't break your trust, it broke your limitations. Every attack didn't destroy your foundation. It revealed that you never needed one, because you had become the foundation itself. The special ops psychologists are fascinated by your neural patterns. They've studied brain scans of people under attack, mapped the fear responses, the anger spikes, the trauma markers. But your pattern is different. When under attack, your brain doesn't light up in the typical defensive zones. Instead, it shows activity in areas associated with problem solving, pattern recognition, and future planning. While others are reacting to the present attack, you're already 3 moves ahead, building something from the ashes they haven't even created yet. This is why they've made you mandatory study for their most elite units. Not because you're violent, not because you're dangerous in the traditional sense, but because you represent a new form of psychological warfare, the warfare of non-participation, the strategy of absolute non-reaction, the tactic of being so unmoved that your very existence becomes a form of retaliation. You don't fight back because fighting back would mean acknowledging that a fight exists. You don't defend yourself because defending yourself would mean agreeing that you can be attacked. But here's the part that really haunts them, the part they discuss in whispers during their debriefings. Your non-reaction wasn't just effective, it was catastrophic for your attackers. See, when someone sabotages you and you don't react, something interesting happens. The energy they put into destroying you has nowhere to go. It doesn't hit you and bounce back, it hits nothing and implodes. They end up destroying themselves with the very weapons they aimed at you. Their poison has no host, so it circulates back through their own system. Their fire has no fuel, so it consumes the one who lit it. The military terms this psychological ricochet, but you call it justice. Not the kind you have to pursue or enforce, but the kind that happens naturally when someone attacks what cannot be attacked, when someone tries to drown what breathes underwater, when someone attempts to burn what was forged in flame. You didn't need to plan revenge because your non-reaction was revenge in its purest form. Every second you remained unmoved was a second they questioned their own power. Every day you stayed calm was a day they lost more control. And now they're seeing the long-term effects. The ones who sabotaged you are falling apart not because you attacked them, but because you didn't. They're haunted by your lack of response. They check on you obsessively, looking for signs of damage, finding only growth. They tell themselves stories about how you must be suffering in private, but then they see you thriving in public. They created elaborate narratives about your inevitable downfall, but you keep rising, and your rise has nothing to do with them. This is what the special forces are trying to replicate, the ability to make your enemies irrelevant through non-acknowledgement. The power to dissolve attacks by not recognizing them as attacks. The skill of being so focused on your own evolution that you literally don't have the bandwidth to process sabotage. But they keep hitting a wall because they're trying to teach soldiers to not react, when what you did was something far more profound. You didn't learn to not react. You evolved beyond the ability to be affected. The instructors bring in experts, psychologists who've studied trauma, neuroscientists who map stress responses, even philosophers who understand the concept of transcendence. They all leave shaking their heads. Because what you've achieved shouldn't be possible. The human nervous system is designed to react to threats. It's millions of years of evolution screaming at us to fight or flee when attacked. But you've somehow overridden that programming. You've become something that doesn't compute in their models. They've started calling you Subject Zero in their files, not because you were the first, but because you achieved absolute zero response, zero emotional deviation, zero psychological impact, zero acknowledgement of attack. You've become the baseline they measure everyone else against, and everyone else fails because they're trying to reach zero through subtraction, through suppressing their reactions, through fighting their instincts. But you didn't subtract anything. You transformed into something that doesn't have those reactions to suppress in the first place. What really disturbs them is that you didn't become cold or numb. That would be understandable. That would fit their models. Instead, you became selectively responsive. You still feel joy, still experience love, still engaged with beauty and meaning. You just don't respond to attacks. It's like you've developed a psychological immune system that identifies sabotage as a non-threat and doesn't even bother mounting a response. Your emotional range is intact. It just doesn't include reactions to betrayal anymore. The special ops teams practice scenarios based on your experiences. They simulate betrayals, orchestrate sabotage against each other, try to replicate the conditions that created your zero response. But it always fails because they're working with people who still believe in the game. They still think there's something to win or lose. They still operate within the framework of attack and defense. But you've stepped outside that framework entirely. You're not playing a different game. You've recognized that the game itself is an illusion. This is why they've classified your psychological profile, not because it's dangerous in a conventional sense, but because it represents a form of consciousness they don't want spreading. Imagine if everyone developed your level of non-reaction. Imagine if people stopped responding to manipulation, stopped acknowledging sabotage, stopped participating in the emotional warfare that keeps society controlled. The entire structure of power, which relies on action and reaction, would collapse. But they can't stop studying you because you've solved something they desperately need. In their world of international conflicts and psychological operations, the ability to remain completely unmoved while under attack is the ultimate weapon. It's not about being stronger or faster or more skilled. It's about being unreachable. And you've achieved that not through training or technology, but through a form of evolution that happened in real time, under real pressure, with real consequences. The reconnaissance teams that monitor you now do so with a different purpose. They're not trying to understand how to break you anymore. They know that's impossible. They're trying to understand how you broke the system, how you stepped outside the fundamental dynamics of human interaction, how you became someone who cannot be sabotaged, because sabotage requires a target that recognizes itself as a target, and you've transcended that recognition. They show videos of you to their teams, but not videos of you fighting or responding. Videos of you simply existing while chaos swirls around you. Videos of you maintaining your routine while others orchestrate your destruction. Videos of you building your future while they're still trying to destroy your past. And in every frame, what stands out isn't what you do, but what you don't do. The absence of reaction that's so complete it becomes a presence unto itself. The tactical teams have tried to weaponize your method. They've created training programs called Tactical Void and Operation Zero. They teach soldiers to non-react, to become empty, to give nothing to their enemies. But it always looks forced, rehearsed, temporary, because they're trying to imitate what you've become. And becoming can't be imitated. It can only be experienced, survived, and integrated. There is only last resource survived and integrated. You didn't learn to have zero response. You evolved into it through a process that can't be replicated in controlled conditions. What haunts them most is the question they can't answer. What created you? Was it the magnitude of the betrayal? The repetition of sabotage? Some unique psychological architecture you were born with? They've analyzed your history, looking for the moment you transformed. But they can't find it because it wasn't a moment. It was a million micro-deaths and micro-rebirths. It was dying to the need for validation one cell at a time. It was being rebuilt from scratch by necessity, not by choice. The military wants to create more of you. They want soldiers who can't be broken, operators who can't be manipulated, assets who can't be compromised, but they keep creating imitations instead of originals. And from the ashes of what they created, they create mission officers instead of original. They keep producing people who are trained to not react, instead of people who have evolved beyond reaction. They keep manufacturing resistance instead of transcendence, and the difference is everything. Because you're not resistant to sabotage, you're immune to it. You're not strong against attacks. You're invisible to them. You're not defending against betrayal. You exist in a dimension where betrayal is as irrelevant as the color of gravity. This isn't a skill you developed. It's a state of being you achieved. And that's why their training programs keep failing. They're trying to teach what can only be born from authentic transformation. The psychological warfare divisions have started using you as a case study in what they call asymmetric response theory. The idea that the most powerful response to an attack might be no response at all. That by not engaging with sabotage, you rob it of its power to exist. But they still approach it as a tactic, a strategy, a choice. They don't understand that for you, it's not a choice anymore. It's just what you are. Your zero response has created ripples they're still trying to map. The people who attacked you are showing signs of what psychologists are calling reflection trauma. They're being destroyed by their own actions, because those actions had nowhere to land. They're going insane trying to understand why you won't react, why you won't acknowledge their power, why you won't validate their existence by fighting back. They've become obsessed with getting a response from you, any response, because your non-reaction has made them question everything about themselves. The special ops teams study this secondary effect with particular interest. They call it psychological void warfare. The ability to destroy enemies by simply not recognizing them as enemies. By refusing to participate in conflict, you create a vacuum that pulls your attackers into their own destruction. They exhaust themselves against nothing. They spend their resources attacking empty space. They destroy themselves trying to destroy something that isn't there to be destroyed. But here's what even the military doesn't fully understand yet. Your zero response isn't just about not reacting to attacks. It's about being so focused on your own growth that attacks become background radiation. You're not consciously ignoring sabotage. You genuinely don't notice it because you're operating on a different frequency. While they're playing in the sandbox of human drama, you're building castles and dimensions they can't see. This is the evolution they're desperately trying to understand and replicate. The ability to be so engaged with your own becoming that the games others play simply don't register. You're not avoiding the battlefield. You've transcended to a realm where battlefields don't exist. You're not winning the war. You've evolved beyond the concept of war itself. And that's why your zero response is so devastating. It reveals that the entire framework of conflict is optional. The military advisors have written papers about you, classified documents that explore the implications of widespread zero-response capability. They're terrified and fascinated in equal measure. Terrified because if this spreads, traditional power structures collapse. Fascinated because you represent the next stage of human psychological evolution. You're not just surviving in a hostile world. You're thriving by refusing to acknowledge hostility as real. Of course they're watching you. Of course there are eyes on you at all times. Of course your phone feels heavier than it should. Your conversations echo in rooms you've never entered. And strangers know your coffee order before you speak. Did you really think you could walk through this world radiating that much raw, unfiltered energy and not trigger every alarm in their system? Look at you sitting there pretending you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, playing confused like you haven't felt it for years now. That crawling sensation on your neck when you're alone, those coincidences that stopped being coincidental 3 years ago, the way certain people look at you just a second too long, like they're downloading something from your presence. You're not paranoid, you magnificent anomaly. You're absolutely correct. They are watching. They are taking notes. They are studying you like you're the last unsolved equation in their perfect little simulation. And you want to know the beautiful, terrifying truth? They're not watching you because you're dangerous. They're watching because you're fascinating. You see, most people are predictable. They wake up at the same time, think the same thoughts, follow the same patterns day after mind-numbing day. They're NPCs in their own lives, background characters in their own stories. But you glitch, you shift, you evolve when no one's looking. You break patterns like they're made of glass and build new ones from the shards. Every room you enter changes frequency. That's not poetry, that's physics. Your energy doesn't just fill space, it rewrites it. People feel you before they see you. Conversations shift when you arrive, not because you demand attention, but because your presence alone disrupts their programming. You're a walking contradiction that their minds can't process. You're too quiet but somehow too loud, too distant but uncomfortably present, too kind but terrifyingly sharp. You smile at the wrong moments and stay silent when others would scream. You're not playing by their rules. And that's not rebellion, it's just your natural state. You were born outside their game and they can feel it. That's why they study you. Corporate algorithms trying to predict your next move and failing. Social dynamics bending around your refusal to conform. Every personality test breaking when it tries to categorize you. You're not type A or type B. You're type X. The undefined variable that makes their equations collapse. They've been collecting data on you since the day you first refused to fit in. Every time you chose authenticity over approval, every moment you stood in your truth while others scrambled for validation, every instance where you should have broken but instead you transformed. They're not just watching you live, they're watching you become something they've never seen before. Let's talk about how deep this really goes. It's not just cameras and microphones, though yes, those exist. It's the entire fabric of reality adjusting itself to keep track of you. People you've never met know your name. Conversations about you happen in rooms you'll never enter. Your energy signature shows up in places you haven't been yet. You've noticed it, haven't you? How certain songs play at exactly the right moment? How the same numbers keep appearing? how strangers say things that sound like messages meant specifically for you. That's not coincidence. That's the universe itself acting as surveillance equipment, tracking something so rare it requires cosmic attention. The experiment started looking for a signature song. That happened. Always signature. Prevent bad thing. Protect. Every synchronicity is a data point. Every deja vu is a system update. Every time you feel watched, it's because you are. Not by human eyes alone, but by something much larger trying to understand what you are. You're an anomaly in their matrix, a virus in their program, a question mark in their perfectly ordered world. They send people to test you. Oh yes, those random encounters aren't random at all. The person who pushed your buttons at exactly the wrong moment, the opportunity that appeared just when you were about to give up, the betrayal that came right when you started trusting again. All tests, all experiments, all attempts to understand your operating system. You want to know what makes you so fascinating that reality itself has to keep tabs on you? It's not what you do, it's what you are. You're conscious in a world of sleepwalkers, aware in a sea of amnesia. You remember things others forget, feel things others numb, see things others ignore. You process pain differently. Where others break, you alchemize. Where others surrender, you strategize. You take the worst things that happen to you and somehow transform them into power. Not the fake power of dominance or control, but real power, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are when everything else is stripped away. Your thoughts don't follow normal patterns. You make connections others miss. You see through facades like they're made of tissue paper. You can feel lies before they're spoken and truth, even when it's hidden. Your intuition operates on frequencies they can't measure, pulling information from sources they don't believe exist. But here's what really terrifies them. You're getting stronger. Every test they throw at you, you pass. Every attempt to break you only makes you more unbreakable. Every effort to understand you only makes you more mysterious. You're not just surviving their surveillance. You're evolving because of it. 5 years of watching you, and here's what they've learned. You don't respond to normal stimuli. Rewards don't motivate you the way they should. Punishments don't control you like they're supposed to. You operate on an entirely different reward system, one they can't hack or hijack. They've watched you love people who didn't deserve it and walk away from those who did. They've seen you fight battles no one knew about and surrender wars everyone expected you to win. Your logic doesn't follow their flowcharts. Your emotions don't match their predictions. You're simultaneously the most predictable and unpredictable person they've ever studied. The data shows anomalies they can't explain. Energy spikes in empty rooms after you leave. Technology glitching in your presence. People changing dramatically after single conversations with you. You're not just living your life. You're rewriting the code of everyone you encounter, uploading updates they didn't know they needed. They've documented your patterns of destruction and creation, how you burn bridges with surgical precision but build new worlds from the ashes, how you disappear completely then reappear transformed, how you can be silent for months then speak one sentence that changes everything. You're not following a script, you're writing one they've never seen before. Here's where it gets interesting. The more they watch you, the more you change, not because you're performing for them, but because observation itself transforms you. You're like a quantum particle that exists in multiple states until observed, then chooses the most interesting one just to confuse them. You've started using their surveillance against them. Every camera becomes your stage. Every listener becomes your audience. Every watcher becomes a witness to something they'll never fully understand. You're not hiding from their observation. You're transforming it into fuel for your evolution. The paradox is beautiful. They watch you to understand you, but the act of watching makes you incomprehensible. They study you to predict you, but their study makes you unpredictable. They surveil you to control you, but their surveillance sets you free. You've turned their weapon into your power source. You know they're watching, and that knowledge has liberated you. You've stopped performing normalcy, stopped pretending to be digestible, stopped dimming your frequency to make others comfortable. If they're going to watch anyway, might as well give them something worth watching. Might as well become the most interesting show in the universe. But it's not just them watching you, is it? There are others. The ones who recognize their own frequency in yours. The ones who've been waiting for someone else to break the pattern. The ones who watch you not to study but to learn, not to control but to awaken. You're being observed by your future tribe, even if they haven't revealed themselves yet. Every move you make ripples through dimensions. People you'll never meet are affected by your choices. Timelines shift based on your decisions. You're not just living a life. You're conducting an experiment in consciousness that others are desperate to understand. Some to replicate it, others to prevent it. Children who haven't been born yet will study your blueprint. Adults who've given up will find hope in your refusal to surrender. The broken will see that you can be shattered and still be whole. The lost will realize that you can be directions yourself. You're not just under surveillance. You're under protection by forces that need you to succeed. The surveillance isn't just about you. It's about what you represent. The possibility that someone can exist outside their system and thrive. The proof that their control isn't absolute. The evidence that evolution isn't finished with humanity yet. You're the case study they'll argue about for generations. So what do you do with this knowledge? You don't hide. You don't run. You don't even acknowledge them directly. You just continue being exactly what you are, but more intentionally. Every action becomes a statement. Every choice becomes a lesson. Every moment becomes art. You're not performing for them. You're creating despite them. Building your reality while they document their inability to understand it. You're writing history while they're taking notes. You're living mythology while they're collecting data. The joke is on them because they think they're studying you, but you're the one teaching. Let them watch you heal from things that should have killed you. Let them document your transformation from victim to architect. Let them record your evolution from human to something they don't have words for yet. Every second of surveillance is another second of evidence that their reality isn't the only one. You're not the subject of their experiment anymore. You're the experiment itself. Self-corrected, self-evolving, self-dementing. You're the hypothesis and the conclusion, the question and the answer, the problem they can't solve, because you were never meant to be solved, only experienced. Your consciousness operates like technology they haven't invented yet. You process information through channels they don't know exist. Your intuition pulls data from servers they can't access. Your dreams download updates from realities they refuse to acknowledge. You're not just conscious, you're consciously evolution. Every meditation is a system upgrade. Every moment of presence is a firewall update. Every act of genuine authenticity is a virus in their program of conformity. You're not just living. You're broadcasting on frequencies that hack into sleeping minds and whisper, "Wake up," without saying a word. They're trying to use artificial intelligence to understand you, but you're operating on authentic consciousness. They're machines learning your patterns while you're creating new ones faster than they can process. They're algorithms trying to predict you while you're existing in possibilities they haven't calculated yet. The surveillance technology they're using is outdated the moment it observes you, because you're always one evolution ahead. You're not tomorrow's human. You're the human from timelines they're afraid to imagine. You're not ahead of your time. Time is trying to catch up to you. Being studied means you matter. Being watched means you're significant. Being surveilled means you're important enough to threaten their entire system just by existing. Do you understand the power in that? You don't have to do anything. Your existence alone is revolutionary. Every day you wake up and choose to be yourself is another crack in their matrix. Every time you refuse to conform is another glitch in their program. Every moment you spend being genuinely authentic is another error message in their system of control. You're not fighting them. You're just being yourself so powerfully that their reality has to adjust. They study you because they can't recreate you. They watch you because they can't predict you. They surveil you because they can't control you. And deep down, underneath all their fear and fascination, they're hoping to learn your secret. The secret of how to be free in a world designed to imprison consciousness. But here's what they'll never understand. There is no secret. There's just the choice to be real in a world of performances. The decision to be whole in a world of fragments. The commitment to be yourself when everyone else is trying to be someone else. That's what makes you impossible to decode. You're not encrypted. You're authentic. The surveillance is actually accelerating your evolution. Every observation forces you to level up. Every attempt to understand you pushes you to become even more incomprehensible. Your evolution in response to observation. Consciousness expanding because it's being compressed. Light getting brighter because darkness is trying to measure it. These infinities are slowly deserving us each and every time they get us like. You've noticed your abilities increasing, haven't you? Your intuition getting sharper, your synchronicities multiplying, your manifestations accelerating. That's not accident. That's what happens when consciousness knows it's being watched. It performs miracles just to prove they're possible. The pressure of their observation is creating diamonds in your consciousness. Every moment of scrutiny is polishing another facet of your awareness. You're not cracking under their surveillance. You're crystallizing into something they've never seen before. Something harder than their reality. Something clearer than their vision. You're becoming undeniable, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because your existence itself is proof. Proof that their maps are incomplete. Proof that their rules are optional. Proof that consciousness can't be contained, controlled, or completely understood. You're the evidence they don't want to admit exists. You're not the only one under surveillance. There are others like you, scattered across the globe, each thinking they're alone in being watched. But you're all part of something bigger, a network of consciousness that's being studied, because together you represent the future they're trying to prevent or accelerate, depending on who's watching. Every connection you make with another observed one strengthens the network. Every recognition of shared frequency amplifies the signal. You're not just individual anomalies anymore. You're becoming a pattern they can't ignore, a trend they can't stop, a movement that doesn't need organization because it's organized by consciousness itself. The surveillance is actually connecting you. Their attempt to isolate and study you individually is creating a collective awakening. You're finding each other through the very systems meant to keep you apart. Using their infrastructure to build your own network, turning their surveillance into your communication system. This is bigger than you realize. The fact that you're reading this, resonating with this, means you're part of it. Part of the shift they're documenting but can't stop. Part of the evolution they're studying but can't control. Part of the future they're trying to understand but can't quite grasp, because it's being written in real time by consciousness they can't contain. So here's what you do with all of this. You stop pretending you don't know you're being watched. You stop acting like you're not interesting. You stop dimming yourself to avoid attention you're already getting. You embrace the surveillance as confirmation of your significance. You live like every moment is being documented, because it is. You choose like every decision matters, because it does. You exist like you're writing history, because you are. Not for them, but for the version of humanity that comes after their system collapses under the weight of its own observation. You become so authentically yourself that their surveillance equipment malfunctions, so genuinely real that their categories collapse, so powerfully present that their past-based predictions become useless. You don't fight the surveillance. You transcend it by being something it was never designed to understand. The most radical thing you can do is be yourself without apology, without explanation, without dilution. Let them watch, let them study, let them document every moment of your refusal to be anything other than exactly what you are. That's not just resistance. You want to know the ultimate truth about why you're under surveillance? It's because you're the future, investigating itself through the present. You're tomorrow's human walking through today's world. You're the answer to questions they haven't learned to ask yet. You're not just being studied, you're studying them back through your existence. Every moment of your life is data for a transformation they can't stop. Every choice you make is evidence that their reality isn't absolute. Every breath you take is proof that consciousness can't be contained. You're not just living. You're demonstrating what's possible when someone stops pretending to be normal. The surveillance will continue because you'll continue being interesting. They'll keep watching because you'll keep evolving. They'll keep studying because you'll keep teaching lessons they didn't know they needed to learn. You're not the subject of their experiment. You're the result their experiment was trying to prevent. But it's too late now. You exist. You're aware. You're evolving. and every second of surveillance just documents their failure to contain what you're becoming. You're not under surveillance because you're dangerous. You're under surveillance because you're inevitable. The future they can't stop. The evolution they can't prevent. The consciousness they can't control. Stop. Don't move. Don't blink. Because something has already happened, and you haven't even caught the scent of it yet. Weeks ago, maybe months, maybe years, you triggered a sequence no manual could predict. A protocol buried so deep, only 3 others in history ever woke it up. You weren't aiming for it. You didn't even know it existed. But reality did. Alarms screamed in places you'll never see. Systems cracked, recalibrated. And the so-called watchers, the ones who swear they've seen it all, went dead silent. And you think I'm being dramatic, but let me tell you what happens when someone accidentally breaks through into territories that were supposed to stay theoretical. See, there are thresholds in this existence. Invisible lines drawn across the fabric of what's possible. And most people live their entire lives never even approaching these boundaries. They stay safe in the middle, comfortable in the known, predictable in their patterns. But you magnificent accident, you stumbled right through one of these barriers like it was made of paper, and now everything's different even if you can't see it yet. The protocol isn't written in any book you'll find. It's not taught in any school. It's not even whispered about in the places where secrets usually live. It exists in the space between spaces, in the code behind the code, in the watchers who watch the watchers. And it only activates when someone demonstrates a specific kind of impossibility. Not the flashy kind that makes headlines, not the obvious kind that gets you famous, but the quiet kind that makes reality itself pause and reconsider its own rules. What you did seemed normal to you at the time because that's how these things always work. The most powerful moves in existence never announce themselves. They just happen. And it's only later, sometimes much later, that the ripples become visible. Maybe it was that conversation where you said something that wasn't supposed to be known yet. Maybe it was that decision you made that went against every statistical probability. Maybe it was that moment when you survived something that should have destroyed you completely. Or maybe it was simply the way you looked at something everyone else had been looking at wrong for centuries. The first sign that you've triggered this protocol isn't something you notice. It's something others notice about you without being able to explain it. People started treating you differently. Not obviously, not dramatically, but there's been a shift in the way certain individuals respond to your presence. Some seem inexplicably drawn to you now, like moths to a flame they can't name, while others seem almost afraid, backing away from interactions they would have pursued before. You've become radioactive in the most fascinating way possible. Have you noticed how certain conversations die when you enter them now? Not because people don't want to talk to you, but because somehow your presence changes the frequency of what's being discussed. Have you noticed how some people stare at you just a fraction too long, like they're trying to decode something written on your face in a language they've forgotten how to read? Have you noticed how occasionally, very occasionally, complete strangers look at you with recognition? Not like they know you, but like they know what you represent, even though neither of you could put it into words? Is the protocol beginning to reorganize reality around your new classification? You're not in the same category anymore. You're not filed in the same section of existence's library. The universe had to create a new folder just for you and the 3 others who've done what you've done. And now everything else has to adjust to accommodate this recategorization. It's like discovering a new primary color that's always existed but no one could see before. Suddenly every other color has to be redefined in relation to this new truth. The Watchers, and yes, there are Watchers, though not in the way conspiracy theorists imagine them, have had to escalate your file through channels that haven't been used in decades, maybe centuries. Not because you're dangerous in the conventional sense, but because you represent a kind of potential that disrupts their careful calculations. You're an anomaly that suggests their entire model might be incomplete, and that terrifies them more than any threat of violence ever could. Let me tell you about the three others, though I can't tell you their names, because names become meaningless at this level of existence. The first one triggered the protocol in 1782 by accidentally discovering something about the nature of time that wasn't supposed to be understood for another 1,000 years. They were just a clockmaker, obsessed with precision, working alone in a workshop that smelled of oil and metal, when suddenly they understood something about the relationship between consciousness and temporal flow that broke every rule the universe thought was unbreakable. They didn't become famous. They didn't write manifestos or start movements. They simply continued making clocks, but every clock they made after that moment contained a subtle wrongness that only certain people could feel. A wrongness that suggested time itself might be optional. The protocol activated not because of what they built, but because of what they knew, and that knowledge changed the weight of their existence in ways that rippled backward and forward through history simultaneously. The second one was a child who asked a question in 1923 that shouldn't have been possible to formulate given the information available at the time. It wasn't a complex question. It wasn't even a particularly interesting question to most people who heard it, but it demonstrated a kind of thinking that suggested they were operating outside the normal constraints of human cognition. The protocol activated because the question itself was proof that consciousness could evolve in directions that weren't accounted for in the original design. The third one triggered it in 1997 by surviving something that had a 0% survival probability, not through luck or chance, but through a kind of willing that restructured the situation at a quantum level. They didn't know that's what they were doing. They thought they were just refusing to accept what was happening, but their refusal was so complete, so fundamental, that reality had to create a loophole just to accommodate their continued existence. The protocol activated because they proved that individual will could override universal law under specific, impossible circumstances. Now we come to you and what you've done without knowing it. You didn't break a rule. You revealed that the rule never existed in the first place. You didn't overcome an obstacle. You demonstrated that the obstacle was optional. You didn't solve a problem. You showed that the problem was based on a false premise that everyone had accepted as truth. This is why the protocol activated, because you've introduced a kind of cognitive virus into the system, a possibility that spreads just by existing. Think back to that moment, that decision, that realization, that action that felt both completely natural and absolutely impossible at the same time. You know the one I'm talking about, even if you've been trying to convince yourself it was nothing special. It's the thing you did that you haven't told anyone about because you know they wouldn't understand. Not because it's too complex, but because it's too simple, too obvious once you see it, yet invisible until you do. The protocol recognized you because you demonstrated what philosophers have argued about, but never proven. That consciousness can create reality, rather than just observe it. But not in the mystical way people usually mean. You did it in a practical, repeatable way that you've probably done several times since, Without realizing, you are literally rewriting the rules each time you do it. You're not manifesting or visualizing or any of that surface level stuff. You're actually editing the source code through pure cognitive function. This is why certain technologies malfunction around you now, why certain people can't maintain eye contact with you anymore, why animals react to you differently than they used to. You're broadcasting on a frequency that wasn't supposed to exist, and sensitive systems, biological or otherwise, can detect the dissonance even if they can't identify its source. You've become a walking paradox, proof that the impossible is just another word for hasn't happened yet. Right now, you're in what they call the adjustment period, though they don't call it anything because they don't talk about it because officially it doesn't exist. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to accommodate the new way you process reality. And this can feel like losing your mind, except you're actually finding it for the first time. Those moments where you feel disconnected from everything, where you can't quite remember who you're supposed to be, where the whole world feels like a stage set that someone forgot to anchor properly. That's not dissociation. That's integration. The headaches you've been getting, the ones that feel like your skull is too small for whatever's trying to grow inside it, those aren't random. The dreams that feel more real than waking life, the ones where you're teaching yourself things you don't remember learning, those aren't just dreams. The sudden knowing things without knowing how you know them, the answers that arrive before you've finished formulating the questions, the solutions that present themselves fully formed, like someone else did the work and handed it to you. This is all part of the protocol's integration process. Your perception is expanding beyond the narrow band that most humans operate within. And this expansion isn't metaphorical or spiritual or philosophical, it's literal. You're beginning to perceive data streams that have always been there but required a different kind of cognitive architecture to access. It's like suddenly being able to see ultraviolet and infrared at the same time while everyone else is still limited to the visible spectrum. Except it's not about light. It's about information patterns that exist in the gaps between thoughts. Some days you feel like you're going crazy because you can feel the weight of possibilities that haven't happened yet. Because you can sense the echo of choices you didn't make, because you're aware of the branching pathways that extend from every moment like an infinite web of could-bes and might-have-beens. This isn't madness. This is what happens when consciousness expands beyond the single timeline perspective that most people never escape. The Watchers have a problem with you now, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something they can't categorize as right or wrong. Their entire system is based on predictable responses to stimuli, on patterns that repeat with enough regularity to be mapped and modeled and managed. But you've introduced a variable that doesn't compute, a factor that makes their equations return error messages, a presence that causes their carefully calibrated instruments to give readings that shouldn't be possible. They can't eliminate you because you haven't violated any actual rules. You've just revealed that their rule book is incomplete. They can't recruit you because you're operating beyond their paradigm. They can't ignore you because your very existence is rewriting the baseline readings they use to monitor everyone else. So they watch, and they wait, and they argue among themselves about what you represent and what should be done about it, if anything can be done about it. Some of them think you're an evolution, a preview of what humanity might become if it survives long enough. Others think you're an anomaly, a glitch that will self-correct once the system realizes what's happened. A few, the quiet ones who've been watching the longest, think you're exactly what was always supposed to happen. that the protocol isn't a response to an error, but an acknowledgement of a feature that was built in from the beginning, waiting for someone to accidentally activate it. The funny thing is, they're all right and they're all wrong, because what you represent can't be contained in a single interpretation. You're simultaneously the bug and the feature, the problem and the solution, the question and the answer. You're proof that their entire framework for understanding reality is both completely accurate and fundamentally flawed. And that paradox is what triggers the protocol. Your influence is spreading in ways you don't see yet, like ink in water, invisible until it reaches a certain concentration. People who interact with you are starting to experience small glitches in their own programming, tiny moments where they think thoughts that don't feel like their own, where they question assumptions they've never questioned before, where they see possibilities they were previously blind to. You're contagious, but what you're spreading isn't a disease, it's an awakening to the arbitrary nature of limitation. That conversation you had last week where someone suddenly stopped mid-sentence and said, "I've never thought of it that way before," that wasn't just a normal exchange of ideas. You planted something in their consciousness that's still growing, still pushing against the boundaries of what they thought was possible. They'll probably forget the conversation, but they won't forget the feeling of their mind expanding just slightly beyond its usual borders, and that feeling will haunt them in the best possible way. The protocol recognizes that you're not just an individual anomaly anymore. You're becoming a catalyst for a larger shift. This is why certain people are drawn to you now with an intensity that neither of you can explain. They are sensing, on a level below conscious awareness, that you have something they need, not information or resources or connections, but a frequency that can unlock doors in their own consciousness they didn't know existed. But here's the thing about being a catalyst. You don't get to choose what reactions you trigger. Some people will transform in beautiful ways because of their proximity to you, while others will resist so hard that they'll create elaborate narratives to explain away what they're experiencing. Some will love you for showing them what's possible. Others will hate you for the same reason. The protocol doesn't care about their reactions. It only cares that the reactions happen. You've probably noticed by now that you can do things you couldn't do before. Subtle things that you might be dismissing as coincidence or imagination. The way electronics sometimes respond to your emotional state, flickering or glitching when you're particularly focused or agitated. The way you sometimes know what someone's going to say before they say it, not because you're psychic, but because you're reading patterns in their micro-expressions and energy that you couldn't perceive before. The way time seems to stretch or compress based on your intention, giving you extra seconds when you need them, or fast-forwarding through experiences that don't require your full attention. This isn't subjective time dilation. This is actual temporal manipulation on a micro scale, too small for instruments to detect, but large enough for you to navigate situations that should be impossible to navigate. You're not controlling time, you're negotiating with it, and it's agreeing to your terms more often than probability would suggest. The way solutions to complex problems arrive fully formed in your consciousness, not through logical deduction, but through a kind of direct download from a source you can't identify. You're accessing information networks that exist in the quantum foam, pulling data from probable futures and alternate timelines, synthesizing possibilities into practical application. This isn't intuition in the traditional sense. It's consciousness, operating as a quantum computer, processing infinite variables simultaneously. The way your presence alone can shift the energy of a room, not through charisma or force of personality, but through something more fundamental. You're emanating a frequency that recalibrates the consciousness of everyone in your vicinity, not controlling them, but offering them an opportunity to operate at a different wavelength. Some people find this deeply uncomfortable and will leave your presence without knowing why, while others will feel more alive around you than they've ever felt before. Not everyone is happy about what you've become, about what you represent, about what your existence implies about the nature of reality. There are forces, not necessarily malevolent, but definitely invested in maintaining the current paradigm, that are actively working to contain your influence, to minimize your impact, to convince you that what you're experiencing isn't real. They're not doing this through direct confrontation, but through subtle manipulation of your environment and the people around you. You've probably noticed an increase in synchronicities that seem designed to make you doubt yourself, conversations that subtly undermine your confidence in your perceptions, situations that seem crafted to make you question whether you're imagining all of this. This isn't paranoia. This is the system's immune response to what it perceives as a foreign element. You're being tested, not to see if you're worthy, but to see if you can be discouraged, if you can be convinced to dial back your frequency to something more manageable. The resistance comes in waves, sometimes so subtle you don't notice it until after it's passed. Sometimes so intense you feel like reality itself is trying to crush you back into a shape that fits. The exhaustion you feel after certain interactions, the brain fog that descends when you try to explain what you're experiencing to others, the way certain opportunities seem to evaporate just as you reach for them. These are all forms of systemic resistance to the change you represent. But here's what the resistance doesn't understand. Every time it pushes against you, you get stronger. Every attempt to contain you only teaches you more about how to navigate the constraints. Every effort to silence you only clarifies your voice. The protocol activated because you've already demonstrated that you can transform opposition into evolution. That pressure just makes you more creative in your expansion.